In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the film noir Blast of Silence, which was released in 1961. It was written, directed, and starred Alan Barron, and it also stars Molly McCarthy, Larry Tucker, and Peter Clume. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a podcast where we explore movies from all over the world and how the stories are told on film. I want to welcome back Duke Caney, who is an author of Subversia, Death Valley Superstars, and Banned for Life. Duke, welcome back. There it is.
These are my noir credentials. So because when I've been on the show before, it was once we just did a sort of personal interview covering my involvement in film and a little bit about the book. And then the last time I was on, we were discussing Christopher Jones, who's one of the subjects of Death Valley Superstars. But I'm a huge film noir fan. I know that you are also.
Yeah.
And so it's a pleasure for me to be able to talk about what is easily my favorite old Hollywood genre.
Yeah.
I love the crime film overall, by the way. I mean, if I had to, pick not just an old Hollywood favorite genre, but a favorite genre, it'd be the crime film without question.
Yeah, I had such a soft spot for noir as well. Before we jump into it, I always, every time I do a noir review with a new guest, I always ask them how they define noir, because it's some people see it in so many different ways. So I'm curious, what do you think noir, what are the ingredients for something to be considered a noir?
I'm not very strict about definitions. I think it's more a case of I know it when I see it. Shadow and fatalism. Shadow, crime, and fatalism. That would be the three.
As I said before we started to record, I had heard about this over the years and I hadn't seen it. So when you suggested it and I Googled it, I was like, okay, perfect. Because it was my opportunity to finally tune into it. And as I said, I just really, really loved it. And I was curious, what about this film do you like? What's your attraction here?
Well, first of all, I should mention that this film, really technically falls outside the period of classic noir, because it looks to me like it was shot in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
It was released in 61 and it was shot at Christmas time. I saw the film actually with a friend of mine, Joe DiAugustine, who worked as a co-editor in a couple of Quentin Tarantino movies. Actually, we saw the film at Quentin Tarantino's theater, the New Beverly here in Los Angeles. And as soon as the film was underway, I thought he had seen it before, but he hadn't. He leaned over and he said about the voiceover, "Is that Lionel Stander?" And I said, yeah. And then after the film, the one thing he kept coming back to was the fact that that Lionel Stander had done the voiceover. It was not Alan Barron, the star of the film.
Right.
And he had this whole idea that maybe the film was a mess and somebody had come in and written voiceover narration to kind of piece it together, and they got Lionel Stander to do it.
Right.
Because obviously he was a real actor. But Alan Barron, I don't know his background, but he's a little stiff. It doesn't bother me at all. But I don't know that he was really an actor. Maybe he'd taken some acting classes, but he seemed primarily focused on directing. So anyway, I have wandered away from your question.
No, but but it's interesting because when a couple of people recently on some film noir groups on Facebook said the same thing. And I know he originally wanted Peter Falk for this, but there was no money, and Peter Falk's then got a paid job, which was Murder Inc., and took that. But I actually thought he was pretty good. I know that he had been taking some acting lessons from what I read, but he was primarily like an artist, like a comic book artist, and And I knew nothing about him. And of course, later on, he went on to direct a number of television shows, among some other feature films. But I don't know anything about him other than on this film. And he has a memoir apparently as well. So I wanted to check that out. But sorry, continue with what you were saying in terms of what you liked about it.
What I primarily liked about the film was I just love location shots. You know, I love New York very much when I lived there, and so for me it was just this incredible opportunity to really get, you know, something of a good look at New York City in 1960. And there's these great, you know, tracking shots of him, you know, the character walking past these store windows, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, even in Harlem, they have
yeah,
it's just incredible. And I read apparently like it was hard to hide the camera. And you see it. I think there's a couple of instances where people are looking right in the lens. It's very, very brief. But you know, as you know, back then, I mean, it's not like now where like literally a phone like this, you could shoot a movie. I mean, I'm sure the equipment was quite
yeah,
heavy back then.
oh
Um,
yeah.
but
So
there,
that's
there,
one thing I like about it, and it was just the grain of the photography. I'm a
yeah,
big Beat fan, big Kerouac fan, so the film obviously has a lot of Kerouac or Beat type, you know, elements. You know,
yes,
the fat man, you know, one of the villains, the one with the Playboy centerfold on the wall. He has like all these rats
oh
in
yeah, Larry
cages in his
Tucker,
apartment. Yeah,
yeah, Larry
and
Tucker as Big Ralph.
mm, yeah, thank you for giving him a name.
He went on to work a lot with Paul Mazursky he
Mm,
wrote Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice with
wow,
yeah, you know, I
wow.
as soon as I saw him, I recognized him because I just a couple of years ago read a great book on Mazursky, and they talked in depth about their relationship. And he was also in Shock Corridor, but he was really good and a really interesting actor. I don't know, something about the way he spoke and his ease on camera, and like he just seemed like the nicest guy in the world, and then afterwards he's not. You know, he's not at all. I thought his performance was really interesting. So
Well, I think you probably were picking up because he has gentle eyes,
yeah,
you know, as a human being, and and so probably you were seeing, you know, the soul of
yeah,
the actor, you know, not the character. You go downtown, you know, we have the Harlem sequence. We have sort of, what is it, an Upper West Side or Upper East Side? That's where the target is seeing the other woman. I think it looked to me like that was you know, maybe uptown a little bit, you know, not as far uptown as Harlem, but and then you
right,
have the whole village sequence, you know. There's that wonderful sequence where Alan Barron is following, is it Larry Tucker,
yeah,
following him through the streets of the village, and you see all those, you know, those little theaters and coffee shops, the kind of places where Bob Dylan would have been playing at the time as
yeah.
an unknown.
Yeah,
Um,
it looked incredible. When I was watching it, I was thinking of like John Cassavetes' film Shadows, which was
mm,
shot around the same time. And apparently the DOP on Shadows was the camera operator on this film, Eric Kulmer.
mm,
And I imagine this is when the handheld cameras became something that people could utilize. I'm not sure if that's what they used on this. And of course, another obvious connection is, you know, the French New Wave films. And I read apparently when this came out, everyone was connecting this with Breathless, and he laughed because he hadn't even seen Breathless until, you know, a year or two after this was released. But obviously, in terms of, you know, the on location shooting, the grainy documentary style, you know, it has that same look, going out on the streets and just shooting the film, which, you know, now we take for granted. But at that time it was like, you know, you were insane to do such a thing. It was like practically suicide to take a risk. And, you know, but sure enough, he did get it distributed and it got good reviews. And obviously over the years, people like Scorsese, you know, talked about it a lot, and now we have it on Criterion Collection, DVD, only on DVD, not Blu-ray, from 13 years back. But I thought it really blew me away. Everything from the way it starts, it's so
It
you know, you
literally
just,
starts with birth.
yeah,
The film literally starts with birth. It takes
yeah,
you through and a man spent, you sort of see the man's entire life in a way that unfolds over maybe a week,
yeah.
from birth to death. And I wanted to say too that, the ending, I won't give away the ending. Well, I guess I sort of just did, but
That's all right.
um,
We're all spoilers here.
everybody dies in noir. I was trying to think of the new wave film that the ending reminded me of, and I said to my friend Joe after the movie something about Band of Outsiders, and he said, "No, no, no, Shoot the Piano Player."
Oh yeah,
Is
yeah.
you know,
That's
and
Truffaut.
yeah, yeah, exactly, different director.
Yeah,
But you know what I'm talking about, the whole sort of assassination outside and
right.
but I mean that ending is just incredible.
Oh yeah,
What a
yeah.
brave guy to go into
Well,
the water, that guy did, the
I,
way he
I was
did.
wondering about that. Not when I was watching it because it really grabbed me, and it was so powerful, and the fact that he was shot and just full of all that mud and I
Yeah,
just thought, and then afterwards I thought, did he just do that? He
he
must
was
have. I'm like, it didn't look like a dummy or anything, you know.
he must have been wearing some kind of thermal suit under. I
I
mean,
wonder.
well, I mean, how evolved was the thermal suit in those days?
It's certainly hard to say, but yeah, that ending was, and I love the voiceover. I couldn't help but find some of the script online, and it's the voiceover at the end says, God moves in mysterious ways, they said, maybe he is on your side, the way it all worked out, remembering other Christmases, wishing for something important, something special. And this is it, boy. And this is it, baby boy, Frankie Bono. You're alone now, all alone. The scream is dead. There's no pain. You're home again, back in the cold, black silence. And I just thought, it was almost like a death wish in a way. Like this guy who talks, I mean, this is the voiceover, talks so much in terms of wanting to be alone, hating Christmas, hating everybody, born angry, literally born angry, hate being built into him. But everything that he does the opposite in the film. He clearly is lonely. He clearly wants connection. We saw that when he goes to the Christmas party, when he runs into these people from the orphanage that he
Yeah.
was in. It almost to me was someone who just was trapped inside of his own pain, and as he tries to break out of it, he can't. I don't know if that's how you saw it.
I did. I mean, that's actually a very good reading of the film. I mean, I was struck by the fact that the narrator refers to him constantly as baby boy or boy. So in some
Yeah.
way, this character is sort of never became a man. He's sort of arrested in development,
Right.
and he there's that whole thing about because at the beginning of the film, as I said, it begins with this sort of pinpoint of light. He's actually in a
Yeah,
tunnel
I love that.
approaching Penn Station, and the voiceover is talking literally about birth, and so we can't miss the connection there.
Yeah,
And
it's
in some sense,
certainly a metaphor for coming through the tunnel and being born.
well, and of course the train in a tunnel is one of the classic Hollywood euphemisms for
Yeah.
for fucking, basically.
Yes, as we saw in like the end of North by Northwest.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I sort of say in a way that this man attempts to get back into the womb in another way by hooking up with this young woman. He actually almost sexually assaults her.
Yeah.
At one point he just sort of jumps on her. I was struck by sort of the frankness of all of that, given the period, the way he sort of lunges at her and she says, no, no, and
Right.
squirms away from him. He was in the mindset to carry out this hit. He is a professional. He's done this before. And then somehow he subverted from that by running into this guy he knew from the orphanage as a kid, and then going to that party and meeting this girl again that he's carried a torch for. And on some level, he's diverted from his path somehow. He fatally stumbles by doing that. because it's right after he realizes that he doesn't stand a chance with her.
Right.
That he phones the off-screen Mr. Big type guy, who's just a sort of a scary voice on the phone, basically says, I want to pull out. I don't want to carry through with the job. And so in a sense, he kind of engineers his own doom.
Right.
It's almost, like it's like it's a variation on suicide by cop in a way.
Well, that's why I thought, because I thought at first I was like, well, why would he suddenly not want to do it? And I think the only reason really is that, as he said, if you don't kill, if they hire you to kill and you don't kill, then they're going to kill you. So and I think just the fact that he had suggested he wasn't going to do it was enough
Yeah.
for them, and I think he knew enough about them that they would do that. So yeah, you're right. I mean, and I really saw that.
Another thing I just wanted to shoehorn in here, Joe, again, my friend Joe DeAugustine, talked about Taxi Driver with regard
Yes,
to
I was
this
just
film.
thinking that in terms of he becomes a hitman, it's almost like a metaphorically and intentionally he was picking something where he would have to be cut off from society. He would have to not be able to be totally honest. And even in the voiceover, it was always like, the inner conscious, which is that voiceover, like watch, be careful, you have to stay in control, you have to do this because of your job, and so on and so forth. And he keeps going against what he's trying to control, and everything in his life is about control, control, control. And I think ultimately that's why we start to see him lose that control in the film, because you can only repress yourself for so long before
Yeah.
something bleeds out. But what was the connection that you saw? I saw that just in terms of the loneliness of Travis within the confines of that taxi.
I was thinking about it specifically in the scenes in which Alan Barron is in his motel room.
It certainly has the similar themes. I mean, isolation, loneliness, and making oneself that way. I mean, Frankie Bono, he's making himself that way, and like with Travis, you don't really know his history. I mean, you know that he was in an orphanage. You hear his birth, so I guess he was given up or abandoned, and you really don't know much else. And now he's this hitman. So, but you know enough that he's someone who's making himself that way, and that now it's all kind of coming apart on when he goes to New York on this job. Which
Well, you have to assume that he was Catholic, because I think my favorite shots in the film, my favorite shot in the film, I think there's some wonderful shots in the film, but there's a shot of him looking out of his hotel window down at a playground in an orphanage. And there's just something about the lighting on his face. It's like this soft light, a natural light on his face. And he's just contemplative. And I always love contemplative silent shots of people. And the voiceover is filling it in. But you see these nuns down the playground leading these serpentine lines of children, and I don't think that, I don't know that nuns have ever looked creepier to me than they did somehow in that shot. I mean, these sort of black clad figures, with the white bonnets, or whatever it is that they're wearing, leading these sort of lines of children who are kind of following behind. So I think in a way, maybe what's happened is that this man is punishing himself, by leading the life that he is. If you're given up for adoption, or you're, put into an orphanage, if we don't really know, again, how he ended up in the orphanage. I mean, we assume he's an orphan, but he might have just been, placed there by parents. You have that sense that you're sort of unloved and unwanted.
Right.
I can imagine a character like this sort of, one of his ways of acting out would have been to sort of, question the authority of the church, or, speaking up in class or being taught by nuns and that kind of thing, ultimately rejecting God, in other words.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're in the sense that you're right. I mean, you only see that one shot. So when he's looking at this church with all these children, and you know that he was in an orphanage, so you have to really fill in the dots yourself. And obviously, it's totally ambiguous as to why he's wound up the way he was. Which, I love those kind of movies, as opposed to just giving you like flashbacks and more dialogue to tell the story, or he has these monologues telling someone else or something like that. So little about him, which I really like. And I think the voiceover was perfect in terms of someone who can express himself, but he has this inner conscious who's sort of the voice for him.
Yeah.
And I really wonder, I mean, if you took that voiceover out, I mean, this movie would probably not even be half of how good it is. I mean, I just thought that, again, as we said, was Lionel Stander who does the voiceover. And the voiceover was also written by Waldo Salt, who, as I know,
my God, I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, who did, of course, Midnight Cowboy and Coming Home. And it's so incredible. I mean, it almost scared me at the beginning. I actually don't really know many of Lionel Stander's films other than The Game That Couldn't Shoot Straight. I remember him in that, but he was, as I'm sure you know, blacklisted during McCarthyism. So when they approached him for this, he said, you have to give me, he's like, well, pay me $1,000 if you want to use my name. And if you don't want to use my name, 500. So because it was low budget, they gave him $500. So they think he got $500 I mean, I know that, 60 years ago, what would that be now? I mean, it's not like it would be a ton of money anyways, but for such an incredible job that added so much to this film. I mean, wow. I mean,
he just had that incredible voice.
That voice is amazing.
Yeah.
And menacing, and just, it was almost like he was a devil in his shoulder. A couple of times I was like, I don't know if I can trust him, because, he's saying everything he was saying about this guy. We start to see him go against that conscious voice. Like, you don't even hear the voiceover when he's with the woman, and when he starts to let himself go, the voiceover is gone, and I guess that's when he was shutting it off from himself. So
yeah, I'm glad you said that about the voice being the conscience, because again, this is a subject that came up, right after I saw the film, and my friend was saying, well, I don't understand, why did they use Lionel Stander? And I said, because I think it's, you want a detached voice. You don't want maybe the voice of the guy. And in a way that the voice is the voice of an older man. It's the voice of a man the age that the protagonist never will be.
The only thing that was a little vague for me in this film, I don't know if it popped out to you, but the Larry Tucker, the big guy who lives with the rats, who, he's the guy, for the audience, for anyone who hasn't seen it, Frankie Bono goes to him because he needs a gun, a silencer, to kill this gangster on this job he's been hired for. And so they make a deal for, I believe, something like somewhere between $300 and $400 for it, that he wanted a little more, but they compromised. And then later on, when he runs into him at that club, and the gangster is also there that Frankie Bono is going to kill, and he meets him in the bathroom, and he's demanding more, because he knows that racketeer is a kind of a big deal. So the only thing I got a little, maybe I'm a little too practical sometimes, but I was wondering how he put it together that Bono was after that guy. And that was the only thing. I don't know for you if that was something questionable in terms of the script.
Well, I'm always very forgiving of things like that. I used to rent a lot of videos from a guy who ran, one of the best video stores in LA. And I mean, he had quite a wide and eccentric selection. And whenever we would talk about movies, he would say, I don't buy it that this guy would go out onto the fire escape at that moment. I think he would go, to the basement, and that kind of things. And I think, just having talked to him about movies so often, I just thought, I don't want to ever be, that guy that gets hung up on these like plot points. I mean, I'm just like, I'll go with it, because ultimately, he
puts it together, I think. I mean, I guess he's kind of, because they keep cutting back to him looking at Frankie, and you don't really quite know what he's thinking. And I think he's he somehow puts it together. I mean, it's acceptable, but it's just kind of vague. That was the only thing I thought.
I love the scene of the bathroom. I mean, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it
I
was
just love
great.
the way it looks, and you know, with the tiles and all that. And also, you know, did you note that the cabaret performer, that all the songs he sang were about babies? I
Yeah.
mean, again and again, he'd go, "You baby," you know, boom, boom, boom. He's like beating of the bongo drums. You know, here's another song, "Baby and I." You know,
Yeah, and
uh,
Frankie, and the narrator is saying, it calls Frankie Bono baby constantly.
exactly, throughout the entire
Yeah, film.
film, he keeps addressing him as baby boy
Yeah,
and baby and boy. You know, underscoring that whole idea that for me, that this character is sort of somehow sort of still stuck,
in
you know,
in
at that
childhood.
stage.
Yeah,
Yes, and some, you know, he's arrested there.
yeah,
I was going to say that, you know, that the whole racketeer thing, you know, the target of the killing, it seemed to me that on some level, um, that there was something a little Oedipal about it, that a guy like that could have been the father of the assassin. You know, that in other words, the assassin could have come out of an assignation. I mean, he could have originated out of an assignation, not unlike the one being carried on by the target and his mistress.
right.
You know, she might have given up a baby for adoption had she conceived, you know, because this the target, you know, has the pretense of a happy suburban
That's right.
married life. We see his house. Uh,
Yeah, early in the film as he's following him. Yeah, he's out in the suburbs.
right. You know,
Yeah,
I must say he lives rather modestly for so important a figure.
yeah,
But you know, to have a couple of mafiosi arrive in a car to escort him to work in the morning.
yeah.
But
Well, he constantly references that he's. It's almost as if he was trying to build a way to hate the target, and he's like, well, maybe you know, we gotta something along the lines of you know, as he was referring to himself as God, and he was saying that, you know, maybe I'm here to take away scum like Troiano, I believe,
right,
was the gangster.
yeah.
So he seemed to, and I almost as if he, you know, there was a, as you said earlier, there was a guilt about what he does. I mean, you know, you're a hitman. You don't have to hate the guy you pop. But for some reason, it was like he had to make it personal to justify it for himself. That's
Well,
how I
because he
took it.
doesn't really want to do it. I mean,
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
because you know, I mean, obviously, sin doesn't get much blacker than murder, I
Mm,
should think.
mm.
And so every hit job that he carries out in a way, you know, he's that much further, you know, from God and from
Ah,
salvation
yes. Yeah.
and from any kind of normal life, I guess. You know,
Right.
how do you settle into that kind of domestic suburban bliss after
Mm,
you've executed, you know, however many men? He has to talk himself into it.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
rather like an actor trying to, you know, trying to talk himself into giving a performance in a way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
To
bit like
justify
overcoming
it for
stage fright.
himself.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's it. That's interesting. I didn't see the Catholic connection as much as you point out, but now in hindsight, I can certainly see it. And you know, when he goes and kills the big guy, you know, played by Larry Tucker, I thought that was a brutally. I mean, you don't, not that you saw so much,
mhm,
but it was quite violent. Just the fact that he comes at him with that axe and just misses him and gets his arm. And you know, choking him to death. I just thought, you know, like the camera was just right in the middle of it all. I mean, you felt like I just thought it was very effective at really making you feel that murder. I want to watch it again really soon. I mean, it's one of those movies that you just watch and you're like, I want to watch this tomorrow. Again, you know, I just thought it was so great. And I know before we started recording, I had mentioned that here in Canada, we have this company called Unobstructed View, which is just partners with Criterion, and they have it on back order. And it's constantly Amazon doesn't have it. It's also sold out, so it's obviously a popular film. I had no idea. I mean, was it quite busy when you were at the theater seeing it last week?
It was, it didn't, the screening did not sell out. I mean, I can always predict the screenings they're going to sell out at the New Beverly. But no, I didn't have any trouble getting tickets, but it was, I would say that the house was at, let's say 80% capacity.
Okay.
It was a young audience. They were sort of snickering, semi-derisively at the film here and there.
Which moments? Because I'm curious what would make people snicker at this.
I think it was the sort of dated beatnik elements of it.
Oh, okay. Maybe the songs, like in the clubs, maybe was it?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, and like
Okay.
and also the voiceover is just maybe strikes people as just boilerplate pulp novel, which
Right.
in a sense it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I never have problems with films dating. It's kind of like plot devices that strike other people. I mean, for them, that'll just derail the entire film. Well, I just
Right.
don't buy that she would go to law school after, after her father was removed from the bench,
Right.
that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I just roll with it, and it's the same thing with dated. I mean, I love things that are dated. I'm
Yeah.
like, but that was the sense I got.
It's always so interesting to me when I see people. Sometimes I wonder if the laughter is from a sense of nervousness, like it's so effective.
Right.
It's like when you see people get mad, they will cover it with laughing because they don't want it to show, and or discomfort. Because when I see this film, I mean, like I said, when it started, I was, it grabs you. It grabs you, and it's almost shocking that they're starting the film in this way. That it can
Yeah.
make you, it can make you, it can make you chuckle. And so it's always interesting to see something with an audience because you never know where that laughter is coming from a genuine place of humor, or is it because they're, uncomfortable to an extent.
I think the audience was with the film overall, though. But was one of those things, one of those films where when I watch it, I was like, wow, where have you been all my
Yeah,
life?
that's how I felt.
Yeah, you're sort of shocked that you haven't seen it already somehow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it just feels, it's just so great.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and I
you
would,
don't really think of anything past, Touch of Evil as being noir. I mean, that's always like what the I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that's the definitive end of film noir, but often people say, oh, it ended with, Touch of Evil and it went out of fashion. So I don't think of noir in the 60s. I think, that's when you saw maybe some neo-noir stuff pop up, but obviously the industry changed so much. But this is, again, in the 60s, I wouldn't have thought of it, or it's not something talked about that often within, the noir world, so to speak.
well, because it comes in just past the use by date. Let's
Yeah.
say maybe it's excluded from conversations about noir for that reason.
We're in December, it's the holidays, and I love the using Christmas, because obviously Christmas is a time of joy and family and coming together, but it's also on the flip side a very dark time for a lot of people where they can get, if they're lonely, because they're not included within all the, the lights and songs and gifts outside. And I thought it added so well to this film because he's so, he's this lonely, alienated person walking the streets of New York, where, there's that one scene where he's watching like a Santa Claus, perform a little bit in front of a crowd, and the music and the lights. And it's, it's no surprise that often in December you see more people committing suicide, and
Mhm.
there is that flip side to Christmas where it's very depressing for a lot of people. And certainly in this film, I thought he showed that. Yeah, I don't know if that was his intent or if it was just a coincidence that it was Christmas, so they added to it. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I don't know either, but actually, I'm working on a novel right now that within the first few pages of the novel, a character kills himself on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
I had a friend who killed himself on Christmas,
oh,
and he hung himself.
oh, geez.
And I think you actually hit on a very important thing in the film. I'm surprised it took us this long to get to it. I think the fact that that the film does take place at Christmas is extremely significant. I mean, again, you know, this is one of the reasons I connect some of his angst to Catholicism, but also the whole thing of being it would really reinforce for him, you know, how alone he is.
Yes.
You know, at that time of year, that he's excluded from you know, you just said it all. So you know, I love the film. It certainly would be, you know, one of my, you know, top 20 film noirs.
Oh yeah, I think
without
I put
question.
it there now too after seeing it. So thanks again for suggesting it. I don't know when I would have got to it, but I'm glad I did, because it's certainly worth not only revisiting, but people, physical media fans out there, Criterion Collection fans, it's certainly worth owning as well. So I think I'm certainly going to get it. And I know, Duke, people can find you on Twitter at Subversia.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that in the description box if you want to follow Duke. And where's, I know I've asked you this before, but where's the best place to purchase your books? Is there somewhere where you prefer people get them?
No.
Amazon, stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, you know, I hate Amazon, but at the same time, I know that when if I check it, and I try never to go over there and check it, if I can tell by the little you know, the sales figure that it's not selling any copies, I you know, that's an invitation to fall into despair. So I mean, you know, it can be ordered through any bookstore. I don't know that a lot of bookstores will have stocked it or would stock it, because, you know, I don't have, you know, that kind of name. But no, it's very easy to get. I mean, anywhere you want to look for it.
Okay, great. And I also talked to Duke about the book the first time he was on the podcast, so I'll leave the link in the description box below. It's a real page turner on essays on many different pulp culture, figures and icons, and it's really, really great. So I'll leave the link in the description where people can also buy the book on Amazon. And if this is your first time here, the YouTube channel is also on an audio version of the podcast. So if you're listening to this right now and you want to hear or watch more, head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. And I also have a Patreon membership which is a bunch of bonus content, where I have a film noir tier, a whole tier dedicated to film noir. Go to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. And lastly, if this is your first time on the YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. Just press the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You'll see it floating above my head right here in just a second. To your top left, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Duke, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me on again.
Yes, and please come again, and we'll see everyone in the next episode.